The following presentation is provided on behalf of the Alaska Backhaul Task Force as an introduction to the extended producer responsibility or product stewardship concept. We're also introducing the term shared backhaul responsibility given Alaska's unique context and waste management challenges. Extended producer responsibility, or EPR, like many tools, is not applicable for all situations and it can come in different forms. Today we'll cover some of the basics. First, let's review the status quo for the path many consumer goods and packaging currently take in our material world and in our economic system. In the most generic sense, a product is first designed, then moves on to be manufactured, after which it flows through retail sales channels and is purchased by a consumer and used until no longer needed and ultimately reaches the landfill or perhaps has components recycled. We draw from across the globe for the components needed to create our products and packages. Then those items are shipped around the world to customers. We go from manufacture globally to dispose locally and managed by local government. Let's take a step back and ask a fundamental question. Just how did waste become something that local governments manage? Waste services grew largely out of public health and sanitation concerns in major urban areas. Local governments stepped in to protect the public. What was in that waste? Inorganics like coal ash, bio-waste like oyster shells and food waste, and products comprised of comparatively simple products. There was no plastic, maybe some vulcanized rubber. The increase in products over the past 100 years means that steadily more designers, manufacturers, and retailers have benefited from the sale of products, while local communities have simply continued to cover the cost of the waste created. This model has led to local governments and their taxpayers and ratepayers taking on more responsibility to cover the higher costs of disposing of products. If we look at the internal logic created by the situation in today's world, given today's waste stream composition, we see a lot of externalized costs available to the producer. Manufacturers have no economic reason to reduce their products' disposal costs, their products' toxicity, or to increase the recyclability of their products and the product lifespan. This begs the question, should local governments and taxpayers cover the costs of handling waste? And is this the way things have to be done? To answer that, let's step back in time. This is the famous Cuyahoga River fire of 1969 in Cleveland. It awakened a nation and in many ways solidified creation of the Clean Water Act and the Environmental Protection Agency under Nixon. Ensuing regulations required effluent control, and the cost for this went into the bottom line, thereby joining other typical costs of business, such as turning on the factory lights, the CEO's retirement package, raw materials, etc. Effluent controls became a cost of doing business, rather than requiring that local governments continually cover the costs of putting out the fires caused by industrial pollution. This led to decades of U.S. leadership in pollution control technology, including export of that technology globally, though arguably the United States has lost that edge in recent years to Japan and Europe. This has also led to a world where we don't even question that producers are responsible for not polluting rivers and our air. This trend is not unique to the environment. The Triangle Shirt Factory tragedy of 1911 brought worker health and safety into the business bottom line. Now those societal norms are codified under occupational safety and health regulations. Ralph Nader's Unsafe at Any Speed and the Chevrolet Corvair brought consumer rights and safety into the bottom line. We now have cultural norms codified under the Consumer Product Safety Commission. These costs all used to be external to product price, paid for by society. Now they are an accepted cost of doing business. Why should a product's end-of-life consequences and management costs be any different? So, if the historic trend line is toward extended producer responsibility for the direct emission of pollutants, for worker safety, and for consumer safety, how do we begin to share responsibility among designers, manufacturers, and retailers for products? Let's review. Who pays now? The manufacturing chain is international. Manufacturing costs are in the product price. The retail network is national, and retail distribution costs are in the product price. Disposal costs, however, fall to local government. Disposal costs are not in the product price, nor are public health impacts. Now we're back to Econ 101. These disposal costs are a classic environmental externality, and local government gets stuck with the bill. This is what many call an unfunded mandate. Some have likened it to the healthcare costs borne by society at large on behalf of the tobacco industry. Let's turn toward the closed loop of EPR. At end of life, the major product life cycle components for which costs must be equitably allocated are collection, transportation costs, and processing. Under EPR, manufacturers take financial and sometimes physical responsibility for these components. To wrap up, let's look at how all this is organized. How does it actually work on the ground? Here's a snapshot of some of the components and considerations from the perspectives first of manufacturers, then retailers, and then consumers. Manufacturers typically participate in a producer responsibility system in one of a number of ways. They may pay into the system based on the number of their products sold into the market in a given year, the so-called market share approach. Alternatively, manufacturers may pay based on the number of units of their product being returned into the take-back system. This is the return share model. A key question is, how much of your product is still out there? If you're a company that sold a lot of product in the past but has low sales now, you will likely prefer the market share approach. To efficiently coordinate manufacturer participation, several producers often work together to create a producer responsibility organization, which helps assure legal compliance with required obligations. The producers or the producer responsibility organization are typically responsible for making sure convenience standards such as distance and time are met through program implementation. For example, are there enough collection sites and are they geographically convenient for the entire population? Retailers serve important roles in take-back systems as well. They often participate voluntarily and aren't legally required to fill a specific role. Retailers contribute valuable program administration time and take on the storage tasks required by take-back. In return, they offer real customer value and often gain foot traffic and customer retention. A system funded through a fee charged at a product's end of life can result in increased illegal dumping. A visible fee for these costs can certainly act to educate the buying public. However, others argue that we don't have a separate fee for all the other components of a product's price, like turning on the factory lights, preserving worker safety, the CEO's retirement package, etc. So why should we have a separate fee for the environmental management of products? Preserving the environment by taking responsibility for end-of-life products should be a cost of doing business, not an add-on fee. In this context, an invisible fee incorporated into the product price truly incorporates responsibility. The Backhaul Alaska Task Force developed a series of frequently asked questions to address issues and topics that often arise during early discussions regarding implementation of extended producer responsibility and product stewardship. Given the importance of backhaul in the waste management system of Alaska, the term shared backhaul responsibility was coined to convey what an end-of-life product take-back program might look like in the last frontier. The following slides present each question individually and are provided here for reference sake. A more thorough written document is available upon request. What is shared backhaul responsibility? Currently in Alaska, local governments and the public bear the burden of the back-end disposal cost of consumer products. But safe and appropriate waste disposal is difficult and costly in Alaska. Shared backhaul responsibility is the concept of sharing the product disposal costs with the producers at the front end. Why is shared backhaul responsibility being considered in Alaska? Health. Certain products like electronics, batteries, and mercury-containing lights, once discarded, can release harmful chemicals into soil, water, and air, particularly if disposed in unlined, uncovered landfills. Equity. Shared backhaul responsibility can shift costs from ratepayers and taxpayers to the producers of products and the people buying those products. In contrast, currently, the cost of product disposal is paid for by all Alaskans. Government support. At a time when important local and state government services are being cut, having producers share product waste disposal and recovery costs allows local governments to address other priority community needs. Jobs. Managing waste and recyclables to maximize recovery and protection of human health and the environment generates more jobs and greater economic activity than landfilling them does. What type of program is being considered in Alaska? Well, a specific program has not yet been developed for Alaska. Program elements for successful implementation in Alaska are being discussed and examined now. Based on over 30 states with product stewardship programs, some with as many as 9 backhaul responsibility laws, dozens of European and Canadian models, and local stakeholder discussions, several attributes have already been identified as critical for contributing to a successful program, including a financing mechanism for product collection, transport, and processing, clear, measurable, and enforceable goals, adequate and convenient collection infrastructure, outreach and education activities, and financial support for state government's role of oversight and program evaluation. Can product prices remain the same for Alaska consumers under a shared backhaul responsibility program? Yes. Generally, SBR programs that are financed through a cost internalization financing approach, rather than those with visible eco fees, do not result in increased prices paid by consumers. Manufacturers set product prices based on numerous factors and often spread localized cost differences across multiple regions, nations, and product lines. Furthermore, the cost of product takeback is small compared to many business expenses. Is the Alaska market big enough to keep producers in the system selling into the market? Yes. The cost of shared backhaul responsibility programs pale in comparison to costs for marketing, production, and distribution, and are unlikely to influence decisions about whether to remain in a marketplace. The private sector is creative and adaptable. In places where shared backhaul responsibility programs have been mandated, producers have proven able to implement the program and have not exited the marketplace. Leadership businesses welcome legislation that levels the playing field, thereby enforcing compliance by their competitors and making sure that participation becomes a cost of doing business for all similar businesses. Shared backhaul responsibility programs can lead to better products available to consumers. For example, when Washington State implemented an advanced recovery fee on mercury-containing lighting, one firm chose to transition earlier than expected toward safer LED lighting products, rather than have a fee at point of sale on its compact fluorescent bulbs that contained the neurotoxin mercury. Is a state law necessary, or could this be done in some other way? State legislation helps set basic ground rules and expectations regarding collection targets, serving rural areas, environmentally sound recycling, etc., and lets the private sector create the most efficient, effective program. Voluntary programs have been successful for the collection and recycling of certain products, but generally cannot provide adequate collection availability. Voluntary programs are also less effective with those products, such as hazardous materials, that are a negative cost for collection and recycling activities. Can the program cover urban and rural areas so all Alaskans can benefit? Yes. Several shared backhaul responsibility programs, including in the Canadian provinces, have implemented programs that require collection opportunities be provided in very rural and remote communities. For example, Paint Care, which operates the paint collection and recycling program in 9 states and the District of Columbia, specifies a collection metric that 90% of the population must have a permanent site within 15 miles of their residence. Collection program performance metrics are designed to meet the needs of the population and region served. What is the role for government, manufacturers, retailers, transporters, and recyclers under a shared backhaul responsibility program? Well, the typical roles for various program participants in a shared backhaul responsibility program are as follows. State government provides overall oversight for the program and is responsible for ensuring and enforcing participation from all sectors. Manufacturers are responsible for financing and managing the program. Manufacturers of the same type of product, for example electronics, often form an organization to operate the statewide program for that product. Retailers generally are responsible for only selling products from manufacturers that are participating in the program. In some programs, retailers voluntarily choose to provide collection opportunities for customers. Transporters move material from collection points to recyclers or processors. They often do this under direct contract to the manufacturer's implementation organization or to recyclers. Recyclers recycle the collected products, generally under a contract with the manufacturers. Recyclers are also often required to register and report to state government on the amount of material managed and the environmental soundness of the recycling activity. How do online retailers participate in a shared backhaul responsibility program? Well, the circumstances for participation in SBR programs by distance sellers, including online sellers, varies widely. With a recent ruling in the U.S. Supreme Court, states are now actively moving forward with requirements for distance sellers to collect and remit sales taxes. These requirements will facilitate greater compliance with any fees or other provisions that may be in place for SBR programs. How might the program create jobs? Several studies have indicated that shared backhaul responsibility programs have resulted in new jobs being created, primarily associated with the recycling of collected products. In British Columbia in 2011, nearly 2,400 net jobs were created due to the quantity of SBR materials collected, and nearly 5,400 net jobs are expected to be created by 2022 for pending shared backhaul responsibility materials. Local collection, transport, and processing prior to hub consolidation and recycling may also allow for job generation in Alaska. Thanks for listening, and please use this email address to get in touch if you want a copy of the PowerPoint presentation or the FAQ document. Thanks again.